Hello everybody, Conductor here. Welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game, and welcome back to the Vector Automotive Challenge. Last time we built a sport utility vehicle, stepped outside of my comfort zone, and had pretty good success. The response to that was much better than I kind of expected. So it seems like we did pretty well with the Mobius. Now I ask people, what do you want to see? Do you want to see us go into the Super Sport GT kind of category, the Corvette-ish kind of category, or the super exotic, mid-engine hypercar kind of category? Surprisingly, once again, people kind of wanted to see the Super Sport, the Corvette-styled car. You can see here, I was a little bit bored last night, and I wanted to do some research about this category of car and overall just gain some experience into what makes a car like the Corvette have a market. What is it about that kind of car that separates it from something like a Vectron, which, like I have said, is more of a pony car than it is a muscle car. So it's more of your Mustang, your Camaro, your Challenger, and even if you go into the Japanese terms, wait a minute. The Japanese manufacturers don't make any cars like this anymore. They used to though, but yeah, like your Supras, your 300ZXs, I guess kind of like your 370Z, something like that. The performance of these, now remember that these are the actual ones, were pretty good. And we were talking about drivability numbers in the 50s, sportiness in the 50s, with a kind of production cost of in the 11,000s. The Corvette analog that I built last night is for a 2003 base model LS3 Corvette, and it had a material cost of about $13,400. So obviously it's more expensive to build. However, the drivability and the sportiness really weren't that much different. This is an interesting kind of topic though, when you think about it, because the Corvette and the Camaro have always had that. There's always an overlap between the two. You could go out today and buy an SS or a Z28 or a Z01 Camaro and be really close or better in performance than a base Corvette. Yes, I realize styling-wise this is not perfect. I was just trying to make a little bit of an analog. But yeah, so the base Corvette and the top-line Camaro do indeed have a little overlap, and it usually is the case that the top-of-the-line Camaro will be just a little bit more expensive than the base model Corvette. But the cars have... oh, ducks. Summer sale! Yeah, it took me forever to get on Steam today because of that summer sale. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, the Corvette is certainly a much different car. So we're going to focus on making our car different from the Vectron as well. Obviously it's going to be a two-seater. It's going to be more set up for kind of road racing, if you will. It has a little bit more of a race car mentality, but still something you can use in the street. So when it comes to building our car, this is probably the obvious body choice. I'm going to try and make it as different from what you see here as possible. We'll see how I do with that. But yeah, I did actually learn quite a bit from building this car last night. Now, these statistics are not necessarily perfectly in line with a actual Corvette, but it did give me somewhat of a ballpark of an idea of what I want to aim for. This is something that car manufacturers do. I read a very good book about the C5 Corvette and also a very good book about the Dodge Viper back in the day, and when they were designing those two vehicles, Dodge and Chevy, they would actually go out and buy cars that were similar to them. One of the ones that really sticks with me is that when they were designing the C5 Corvette, the generation before the one you see here, they actually went out and bought an NSX and had that car in the studio with them the whole time they were designing and brainstorming the C5. And you can see that in the C5 itself, in its design features and stuff like that. So let's get started, shall we? 2008 is the year, and this will be the last vehicle we build for 2008. Then we will move on into 2010 and probably do a refresh of some of the existing vehicles. Maybe not all of them, but we will see. We are going to be using this body, as I said, which is considered to be a 3-door because it could possibly be a hatchback. One of the cool things about this particular body is it has a lot of morphing to it, so you can do some crazy things with it, and really, it's crazy, didn't I? And really make it look completely different. I wish more bodies were as modifiable as this one. So let's see what I can come up with. Alright, before I finish morphing, let me go ahead and do the chassis and chassis material. So the Corvette is famously a glued aluminum / welded aluminum / aluminum material for the chassis with a fiberglass body. Anymore, that's kind of half fiberglass, half polymer. But let's see. Glued aluminum has very high stiffness and very low weight. AHS steel has very high stiffness and kind of average weight. The differences happen to be in the prestige area. I mean, the stiffness is second to none, basically. Carbon fibers is out there. We probably don't have the money for that just yet. And I just don't think it's right for this car either. And let's see. You know what, let's go ahead and emulate our friends at Chevy and go for the aluminum. It's, of course, going to be longitudinal. And double wishbone. Let's see, do we go double wishbone in the rear too, or do we go multi-link? This generation Corvette would have used the strange monoleaf suspension that goes transverse front and rear. We don't have anything like that modeled, so it does use double wishbone front and back. I think we go for multi-link in the rear, and we stick with our typical polymer bodies. Alright, now I can start doing some fixtures. Alright guys, this was a tough one. This is a challenging body to differentiate from existing cars. The front end, I am pretty unhappy from this angle. When you turn to a little bit of the side profile, it's got a little bit of a strange underbite. Yeah. If I could still morph the body, I probably would a little bit, but we are locked in at this point, so that is what it would look like. Then we have on this side the side vents, because I needed a little bit more grill, opening for a relatively small front grill. And then let's see, let's swing around to the rear quarter perhaps, or just the rear. The back I'm pretty happy with, using these taillights I've not used on very many vehicles, and overall the combination of lips and grills and everything like that, the back end looks pretty good. A little bit European maybe, a little bit more European than say the front looks a little bit more American. But of course in the end it still looks a bit silly without the wheels on there, so let's start actually building ourselves a car and finishing this guy out. First, it needs a name, and this name comes from a suggestion from KoensigFan21, and he thought either tangent or cosine. I like tangent because it has some marketability options to it for the future. And then we'll just make the base trim to begin with. Alright, so engine. Oh wait, I need to choose that it's going to be rear-wheel drive. There's our first major decision, I guess, so far. It will be rear-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive. So when it comes to engines, there's an obvious choice to be made here. We have the Gen 2 V8, which is a very good fitting engine for this chassis. Very competitive when it comes to our main competitor, the Corvette. And we have this version called the Output NA now that we've kind of made for the SUV that can be modified to fit even better or have more high performance for the Tangent. The problem with this is it's pretty close to the Vextron, is it not? Now, granted, the Vextron never got the high output version, so, you know, there's at least some distinction if you want to get the high output version in a car instead of a truck/SUV, you're gonna have to get a Tangent. But I don't want this to be the only engine available for the Tangent, so we're going to build a brand new engine, but only for a higher up model. So for now, let's go ahead and build out the base model with this high output NA, which has staggering performance, 587 horsepower, 443 foot-pounds of torque. This engine was really good. We built a great engine for the SUV, and it will fit pretty well inside the Tangent as well. The weird part is it's quite large. 5.9 is, you know, close to 6 liters of dual overhead cam V8, 610 pounds of it. So when it comes to the other engine I want to build for the Tangent, it may actually be smaller. We'll see how it goes. But I think company-wise, budget-wise, this is the obvious choice. So let us pretty quickly here build the actual car. And I'm going to do a lot of mirroring what I've seen with the Vet. So for wheels and tires, let's get this thing actually looking normal now. 19s perhaps. This is a very large wheel arch in this body. Let's do lots of tire, front and rear. Since we are rear-wheel drive, we'll have a good bit of stagger in there. Let's actually push this out too. Does that look good? Maybe even a little bit more. Or maybe a bit more tire in the front and rear. Good. And let's see, 5-spoke, thin spoke, muscly car. No, let's go for the multi-spoke. Let's be different. Being different is good. All right. So there we go. There is our wheels and tires. How about some brakes? Brakes, 3 piston, 4 piston. Let's go 4 pistons in the front, and a 350 millimeter in the front, and a let's see, vented 3 piston in the back, and say a 330. That should be good. And I will look at this later. I now have the how to read the brake chart. I have the comment up by Trifler, so I can go over it once we get there. Fully clad. Let's keep the downforce off of it for now. Let us do a good bit of cooling, and even on the base model, I want to have a little bit of brake cooling. Just a wee bit. Cool. 2 seats. I think that's a bug, guys. I don't think you could possibly get 5 seats in this car. Weird. Sport styled interior is 153 pounds versus the standard is the same, except it doesn't have any prestige. So yeah, let's do the sport. Comfort is low, but that's all right. Standard equipment will just be standard CT, power steering, ABS. I do want to do traction control and stability control even on the entry-level models. This is the difference between this and a Vextron, because this is closer to supercar status, but yeah, it's a super sports coupe kind of car. So I expect people to be able to use this car super high performance and use it safely. When it comes to springs, let's do progressive with gas monotubes, dampers with adjusting. Let's keep that for the other one. Passive, sport, and let's adjust that as needed. There's our initial stat line. That's impressive, 57.57. Yeah, everything looks pretty good here. That's funny. 31.99. I think that is the exact same weight as the C6 analog I made. Very interesting. Very interesting. I think the cost is more, though. I think it is. Let's see. Alright, let's do some adjusting. Gear. We need more. There we go. More drivability and more MPGs. This geared LSD is fine. Wheel spin is massive. Very massive. So we could extend that second gear out. just like you would a Corvette and have super long gears, and I think that is good. Down to 52. Oh man, that's still quite a lot, is it not? I think it is. It's still quite a lot. But that is not taking into consideration this car has traction control. So I drove a Z06 of this era, and wheel spin is ridiculous without traction control. So yeah, I think that's kind of a fair number, to be honest. We could try and put larger rear tires on it. It would help in a minimalistic kind of way. I think it's just a little bit unnecessary for a base model. Alright, so brakes. Let me see here. So basically what I'm getting from this is that you don't want necessarily this red line to be terribly far from the actual front brake force. So anything way above it is just wasted rotor. Same thing for the rear. So as we see here, if I were to reduce the size of these brake rotors down, see the orange line is now closer to the red line, and we didn't hurt anything. We actually didn't even hurt the braking performance, but we lost weight and cost less money. So we can do the same thing for the rear and get this closer to the actual blue line. We're losing weight and not really hurting drivability or sportiness, and we're having zero brake fade issues. So that's kind of what I am reading from that. I think we could probably even go even lower. You can see they're changing between red and green, but the values themselves are not actually changing, nor did the actual braking distance. So, very good information there. Trifler, sounds like this stuff's still got some work to be done to it though, so in the future, some of this may be easier to read or just overall different. As far as this stuff goes, I think we are fine. That's all fine there. And this is all fine and good, and suspension-wise, handling is pretty darn stout. We could possibly squeak some more sportiness out of it. Looks like it's understeering a little earlier than maybe it should. So what about adding a little front camber to it? Yeah, just gets us a little bit more sportiness and doesn't really hurt drivability at all. Alright, so there's our base tangent, which sounds pretty cool actually. Base tangent. 15.5 is the cost, 21.7 is the economy, 57.58. I just want to load up that Corvette real quick here and just give it a little bit of a... Ooh, hopefully I got an error on that. Hopefully it doesn't freak out. A little bit of a comparison real quick. Yeah, okay, it was more expensive. 17.2 versus 15.5, and a 53 versus a 57, and 56 versus a 58. This car has better comfort though, better prestige, and better safety. So, three things we kind of lacked on. So three things that we were a little bit lacking on, but we do have better drivability, better sportiness, and it's less expensive. So I'll let you guys be the judge. How do you think we did versus... I'll let you guys be the judge. How do we do base versus base? Do you think I've done a pretty good little job of putting some fire underneath that Corvette's belt, giving it some competition, something it hasn't really necessarily had in quite some time? So now that we have the base model covered, let's try and go for fighting off a certain ZR1. We're skipping over the Z06. Our base model is, well... Our base model is of good enough performance that we feel it will kind of handle the Z06 on its own. So we're aiming much higher for our Sidewinder model, and that is going to have a brand new engine. So we're building this engine to kind of be our absolute Halo engine. This is something that will probably find its way into the eventual Halo hypercar kind of deal in the future. So it's going to be more race bred. So this engine will be a V8 flat plane, and it will have aluminum heads. It will have a somewhat short stroke. Let's say 5.5 liters sounds good. I don't want it to be too large. I don't want it to be too heavy. And this is the family capacity, so this is max. It will, of course, be dual overhead cam. It will be 4-valve or 5-valve. 4-valve or 5-valve. 5-valve. And then I'm going to go for aluminum heads. No BVL because we have the 5 valves. The crank. I don't think we really need necessarily extremely high torques. Let's just go with forged steel. High RPM is going to be most important, so we're going for I-beam titanium. And you'll see now what the difference between this and the regular Gen 2 V8 is. Just way higher revving, way more stout race style parts. Let's do lightweight forged or just regular forged? It's a question. Let's do regular forged for now, and I'll adjust it as needed. I'm actually going to, again, reduce the stroke. Let's go down to about 5.2 liters. Now, it will be important for this to make more power than the regular Gen 2 V8. We just want to make more power per liter as well. Very high compression. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 12, maybe 11 points. Let's do 11.7. Sounds comfortable. And aggressive, very aggressive cam profile. BBT we can use, so we will. Let's not go for the 80 style. For this purpose, it will be NA, but this is likely to be a turbocharged engine in the future. It will be direct injected. Let's do twin intakes on performance, or twin throttle bodies on performance intakes. Twin throttle bodies on performance intakes. It's going to run on super, 93 octane, which is available at the pump. And we can use a very rich mixture with the direct injection, very fast timing. I would be upset if it couldn't do 8,500 RPM, so let's start with that. Long tubes, and dual exhaust, and bypass valves, and yeah, that looks good. Max power 554, let's do 650. High flow, straight through. No. Alright, what's our baseline at? 564. Okay, so we're having some valve float issues, so might need to do some quality adjustments. Looks like it's kind of petering out at the top as well. Alright, here's the overview. V8 flat plane, aluminum silicone block, 5.2 liter maximum family capacity, dual overhead cams, 5 valves per cylinder, aluminum silicone heads, forged steel crank, I-beam steel conrods, forged pistons, with a variant capacity of 5.2 liters with a 96.6 bore and an 88.7 stroke. We have compression at 12.9, a cam profile at 76, VBT on all cams. Very high quality on the top end to deal with valve float. Naturally aspirated. Injection, dual injection, or direct injection actually. Twin throttle bodies, performance intakes, super unleaded. 12.2 fuel mix, 82 timing, 8,500 RPM limit. Could go higher, but not making power any much higher than that, so that is where we will stand for now. Race tubular headers that we actually did indeed need because we ran out of available power from the long tubes. Dual exhaust at 2.75 inches with high flow cats on a straight through muffler, and that is it, and it does have bypass valves. Boom! 646 horsepower out of 5.2 liters. That is coming with a weight of 458 pounds. That was the big deal to me. The mantra anymore is displacement, displacement, displacement. We need to get more displacement out of these engines to make them more powerful. I wanted to do something a little bit different for our top of the line. I wanted to reduce displacement, but increase the technology and increase the kind of race mentality of this engine in order to get more power out of a smaller package. When we look at the dyno chart, you can see that it has a decently flat torque curve, and we're talking 300 foot-pounds, you know, right from off idle. I'll let it go. Oh, I would love that sound. And then our power curve, you know, by the 2000 point, it's not as easy to drive as, say, a LS7 or something like that is, with just instant power on tap, you know, 1500 RPM cruise around in 5th gear. But there's still enough bottom end here to make it drivable, I believe. Let's face it, at 3000 RPM, it makes more power than my 240. And the car weighs relatively the same. But then when you want to make power, you let that baby rev on out all the way up to 8,000 RPM, and you're still making peak power even beyond there. So, yeah, very impressed with these numbers, and that's definitely the style of engine I wanted to build. That's what I had in mind. So now we need to put this into the tangent sidewinder, and definitely need to adjust some things because this is a lot different engine than what we had before. So I did have to change the gearing and the gear spacing to deal with that more top-end minded engine. When it comes to the wheels, we did indeed increase the tire width significantly, especially in the back to 335s. We are now using 19-inch rims and magnesium wheels to lower the weight due to the increased wheel diameter. When it comes to brakes, we don't really need to do too much. This car already had more brakes than it could ever use, so we just put some more race-style pads on there to increase sportiness feeling. We will need a little bit more cooling airflow, but not much. And we are also going to add a little bit of downforce to this guy. Inside, we feature a higher quality sport interior. We get sat-nav now, we gain launch control, and let's actually increase the quality of said electronics. Otherwise, stays the same. We'll also gain some adaptive dampers and some semi-active sway bars. And let's try and adjust the handling a little bit. Looks like we're having some pretty dramatic understeer issues. Let's see what we can do about that. Alright, so what we ended up doing was going back and going up to 315s in the front to get rid of some of the stagger, which allowed us to just put some camber in the rear, which allowed us to get a stickier kind of drive that understeers still, but understeers much later on, much faster speed. And overall, I think helped our sportiness out to the point where it's up at the almost 70 range, while still retaining a positive or a above 50 drivability. So here we are, a sidewinder tangent. What does it have? Well, it has 646 horsepower. It has a 52.2 drivability, 69.6 sportiness. The other ones, well, they're not important, are they? Total cost to produce of $23,000, so we're talking ZR1 style, you know, MSRP. An economy that's irrelevant, but 17.4. A weight that has come down slightly from the base model, which is impressive when you consider the fact it has way more wheels and tires under it, and more technology and higher quality materials on the inside and everything like that. Overall, this is a lot more car for a lot more money, but still has less weight. We're talking a 0 to 60 of 4 seconds and a quarter mile of sub 12 in the 11.46 range. As you can see here, this car does make 144 pounds of rear downforce, which should help with some of that extreme oversteer from all that power. It does have a fairly nice weight distribution, 52.1, 47.9 rear. I'm curious what that is versus the base model. Weight distribution versus the regular base model is definitely improved with a 53.8 on the base model, and the sidewinders 52.1, and that's going to be important once we hit the test track. So what do you think it did? Do you think it's faster than, say, a GTR? Maybe a 997 GT2? How fast is this thing? We don't really know what the ZR1 did because it never ran the test track in actual dry conditions, which is a shame. But let's see what we did. Well, it seems we fell short of our lofty goals at a 121.4. That actually kind of puts us in the territory of, say, the Ford GT and the Mercedes SLS, the 599 GTB, but not the newer cars like the ZR1, the 599 GTO, the Nissan GTR, and I think some of that has to do with the aero aspects. I made probably a little bit of a mistake in choosing to go with the looks of having the spoiler in the back, which means that I lost out on having a lip in the front, so I can't have any front downforce. And for whatever reason, the lips actually will not fit this body, so we couldn't have a lip on there to actually work. But that is alright. I am still pretty pleased with our performance, and I think possibly we could be cheaper than a ZR1. I'm not really sure. Unfortunately, we can't really build a ZR1 because we don't have those, specific set of engine and chassis and body parts to choose from, so we'll just have to imagine it's true. The real question is, what do you guys think of the Tangent Sidewinder? Let me know. I don't know where we are headed next. Like I said, we're probably going to move on to 2010 and possibly look at revising a couple of these 2006 models. So stay tuned for that. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you then. Hey Valve. Valve, you're no longer wanted here. I'm sorry. I know. You're sad. You really liked being part of things, but it's time to move on.